Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a medieval tavern, the loudest, messiest, and most confusing place you could end up without meaning to. The beer's warm, the hunter's pot has been simmering continuously, and the whole building leans like it's had one too many drinks. There's shouting, singing, gambling, and you'll even learn why the tavern keeper's ladle was more powerful than a sword. If you enjoy these strange little trips back in time, support the channel and let us know in the comments which medieval drink sounds tempting or terrifying. Let me know below. Now dim the lights, grab a wooden mug, and try not to sit in anything too wet. But first, you need to find this place. Your medieval GPS runs on smell, sound, and sheer determination. The moment you step outside, competing aromas hit you like a punch to the face. There's the blacksmith's forge belching smoke and sparks. The fishmonger's stall radiates ode to dead fish. Someone's burning something that definitely shouldn't be burned. But underneath all this chaos, you catch it. The sweet, yeasty smell of brewing ale mixed with wood smoke and something that might be food. Here's the problem. Very few people can read, so taverns rely on smell and sound, not signs, to guide patrons. Business signs are crude wooden boards with pictures that could mean anything. That painting of a barrel might be a tavern, or it could be where they store grain. The boot symbol could mark a cobbler, or just someone who really likes shoes. Visual cues are basically useless when most of the population can't decode them anyway. So you follow your nose like a bloodhound with questionable judgment. The ale smell gets stronger as you navigate narrow streets, barely wide enough for a cart. You squeeze past a donkey that's decided this exact spot. Medieval businesses advertise through pure sensory overload. Wine criers would shout their wares through the streets, while ale conners tested quality by taste and smell. No billboards, no jingles, just smells and sounds that announce their presence to anyone within a quarter mile. Bakeries pumped out the scent of fresh bread. Butchers contributed their own special aromatics, but taverns? They created a whole ecosystem of sensory signals that made them impossible to ignore once you learn to read the signs. The acoustic clues start hitting you before you see anything. Laughter bounces off the narrow street walls, mixed with shouting that could be friendly or violent. You can't tell yet. Someone's singing about a goose that apparently had romantic troubles with a miller's daughter. The song makes no sense, but the singer's enthusiasm is undeniable. You hear the crash of pottery, followed by more laughter, which suggests either accidents are hilarious here or someone just scored a direct hit in a food fight. As you get closer, the sensory signals intensify like you're approaching ground zero of medieval entertainment. The ale smell becomes overwhelming, mixed with cooking meat and vegetables that have seen better days. Wood smoke pours from a chimney that looks like it was installed by someone who'd never seen one before. The sounds get louder, more voices, more laughter, and definitely more questionable singing about farm animals and their personal relationships. You pass other confused travelers following the same invisible trail. A merchant with a cart full of questionable goods sniffs the air and nods knowingly. A group of pilgrims argues about whether they're lost or just taking the scenic route to salvation. Everyone's following the same aromatic breadcrumbs through this medieval maze, drawn by the promise of warm ale and questionable decision-making opportunities. The streets narrow even more as you follow the trail. Buildings lean in like they're trying to whisper secrets, or maybe just collapse on unsuspecting pedestrians. Mud squelches under your feet with each step, and you start questioning every life choice that brought you to this moment. But the smells keep pulling you forward. That combination of brewing, cooking, and chaos that screams terrible decisions ahead. Chickens scatter as you pass, probably heading to the same place for different reasons. A goat eyes you suspiciously, like it knows something you don't about what you're walking into. Even the animals seem to congregate around this mysterious source of noise and questionable aromas. The acoustic chaos reaches fever pitch as you round a corner. Multiple conversations compete for dominance, none of them making complete sense. Someone's telling a story about a dragon that's probably just a large chicken. Another voice explains why turnips are the root of all evil. The singing continues, now featuring a duet about sheep with trust issues. Pottery crashes again, followed by cheering, which definitely confirms this is either entertainment or a very popular accident. Then you see it, a crooked wooden building that looks like it's had as many drinks as its customers. The structure leans at an angle that defies both physics and common sense. A wooden sign hangs askew, featuring a painting that could be a mug, a bucket, or abstract art created by someone with serious vision problems. This could be the Tabard in London, or any number of establishments that have mastered the art of looking perpetually drunk. But you don't need to decode the artwork, because every other sense is screaming, "This is the place." The sensory trail reaches its crescendo right at the entrance. All vapors pour from gaps in the wooden walls like the building is sweating alcohol. Wood smoke billows from a chimney that clearly has opinions about proper ventilation. The cooking smells intensify into something that's either dinner or a crime against food. And the noise, the beautiful chaotic noise of humans being aggressively social after consuming fermented beverages. This is medieval advertising at its finest. No clever slogans or catchy jingles, just pure sensory overload that announces the tavern's presence to anyone with functioning senses. The building practically vibrates with the chaos inside, like it's barely containing the storm of questionable decisions and aggressive socializing happening within its wooden walls. You've successfully navigated medieval urban planning without a map, street signs, or any ability to read. Your nose led you through narrow streets, past confused livestock, and around buildings that clearly have structural issues. The trail of ale, smoke, and acoustic chaos delivered you exactly where countless others have ended up, standing before a heavy wooden door that's about to change your evening in ways you can't possibly imagine. The sensory GPS worked perfectly. You found the tavern by following the most overwhelming combination of smells and sounds the medieval world could produce. Now you're face to face with that door, and something tells you it's not going to welcome you gently. The heavy iron hinges creak under centuries of drunken customers stumbling through, announcing your entrance to everyone inside with a sound that's part welcome, part warning. This door has seen it all and protests accordingly. The moment you cross that threshold, reality hits you like a physical wall. Heat, smoke, and yeasty beer fog slam into your face in one concentrated wave. Your lungs immediately register the change as this atmospheric cocktail enters your respiratory system. This isn't just entering a building. This is stepping into a completely different ecosystem that operates by its own biological rules. The heat comes from dozens of human bodies pressed together in a space designed for maybe half that number. Medieval taverns weren't built with proper ventilation in mind. Add burning candles, oil lamps, and a massive hearth fire, and you've got temperatures that would make a sauna jealous. Your skin immediately starts adjusting to this new climate zone where sweat becomes a shared community resource. Behind the heat comes the beer vapor, a thick, yeasty fog that hangs in the air like alcoholic humidity. This isn't the clean smell of modern brewing. This is ale that's been fermenting in wooden barrels, mixed with whatever fell into it during the process. Every breath you take includes particles of someone else's drink, whether you ordered one or not. The smell situation escalates quickly from there. Wet wool from travelers caught in rain mixes with smoke from the fireplace. But this isn't clean wood smoke. This is smoke from logs that have absorbed years of tavern atmosphere, and bits of debris and ash often block medieval chimneys. The smoke drifts lazily through the room because moving air through buildings is still a few centuries away from being perfected. Windows are tiny and covered with greasy cloth or animal hide that blocks both light and airflow. The low ceiling traps everything at head level, creating a concentrated cloud of human existence that you're now breathing. If you're tall, you need to duck immediately, or risk knocking yourself unconscious on wooden beams that show zero sympathy for modern height expectations. Your feet register the floor situation before your brain processes what's happening. The ground beneath you isn't solid wood or stone. It's packed dirt upgraded with straw. This straw was probably fresh sometime in the distant past, but now it serves as a living archaeological record of everything that's happened here. Spilled ale soaks into it. Food scraps disappear into its depths. Other substances you don't want to identify have found permanent homes in its fibers. Each step creates a slight squelching sound as your boot interacts with decades of accumulated tavern history. The straw compresses under your weight, releasing aromatic reminders of every meal, every drink, and every bodily function that's occurred in this space. You realize too late that floor was a promise, not a guarantee of solid ground. Everything sticks to everything else in this environment. Your boots immediately start collecting straw, bits of unidentifiable food, and sticky residues that seem determined to follow you home. The air itself feels thick enough to grab onto your clothes. Walls have been polished smooth by generations of elbows, shoulders, and spilled beverages, creating a surface that's somehow both slippery and adhesive at the same time. The lighting adds another layer to this sensory assault. Candles and oil lamps provide flickering illumination that creates dancing shadows on walls stained with years of smoke and splashed beverages. The flames struggle against the thick air, creating an atmosphere that's part dungeon, part party, and entirely medieval. Your eyes need time to adjust from outdoor daylight to this amber-tinted cave of questionable decisions. Sound bounces off the low ceiling and packed bodies, creating acoustic chaos where every conversation becomes part of a larger wall of noise. Laughter, shouting, singing, and the occasional crash of pottery blend into a symphony of human enthusiasm that hits your eardrums like a friendly assault. The wooden walls and floors amplify everything, turning normal conversation into shouting matches just to be heard. Your clothes start absorbing the atmosphere immediately. Fabric soaks up smoke, beer vapors, and cooking smells that will follow you long after you leave. The combination of heat and humidity means your garments begin their own slow transformation into tavern memorabilia. Whatever you wore when you walked in will smell completely different when you walk out, assuming you remember to take it with you. The floor continues its slow conquest of your footwear with each step. Straw sticks between leather and sole, creating a growing collection that makes walking increasingly awkward. The packed dirt underneath shifts slightly with the weight of constant foot traffic, creating an uneven surface that keeps you guessing about where your next step will land. This isn't walking. This is navigating a living, breathing floor that has opinions about your presence. Your breathing adjusts to the thick air as your lungs process this new atmospheric cocktail. Every inhalation brings fresh discoveries about what's floating in the tavern atmosphere. Wood smoke mingles with cooking meat, fermented grain, and the collective exhalation of dozens of people who haven't discovered modern dental hygiene. It's concentrated human existence in gaseous form. The realization hits you gradually but inevitably. You're not just visiting this ecosystem anymore. You're becoming part of it. The straw attaching to your boots makes you a walking piece of the floor. The smoke coating your clothes turns you into a mobile advertisement for the tavern's atmosphere. Your very presence adds to the heat, noise, and chaos that defines this space. Your feet are now permanently part of the floor, and there's no going back. The straw has claimed you, the atmosphere has adopted you, and your boots will never be the same. You've successfully entered medieval tavern society, whether you plan to or not. Now comes the next challenge, finding somewhere to actually sit in this adhesive wonderland, assuming you can locate something that resembles furniture. The visual reconnaissance begins immediately as you scan for available real estate among the communal wooden planks that pass for seating. Medieval taverns operated on simple economics. Benches were communal, cheap to build, and nearly impossible to steal, unlike individual chairs that would vanish faster than your sobriety. But can you find an unclaimed seat before you're forced to stand by the rabble? Every bench tells a story through stains, mysterious wet spots, and the occasional sleeping customer who's become part of the furniture. That dark patch on the wooden plank could be spilled ale, could be something worse, or could be evidence of last night's entertainment that ended badly. The key is finding a spot that won't immediately ruin your clothes, your health, or your will to continue existing in this medieval nightmare. The bench ecosystem operates as a complex social organism where every surface serves multiple purposes. Sleeping drunks claim prime real estate by passing out strategically across the most comfortable spots. They're not moving, they're not conscious, and they're definitely not sharing. Your backside registers the warmth of last night's sleeper, a human heating pad you didn't sign up for. These unconscious fixtures generate heat that warms the wood, creating those suspicious warm spots that make you wonder what biological processes are happening underneath. Feral dogs have claimed their own territories on and under the benches. They're not pets, they're tavern residents who figured out that scraps fall from tables and unconscious humans make excellent pillows. These dogs have survival instincts that keep them fed and warm, which makes them smarter than half the customers. They eye you suspiciously when you approach their claimed seating areas, ready to defend their positions with teeth and attitude. Mysterious bowls of liquid occupy bench space like territorial markers. These containers might hold someone's unfinished soup, someone's finished soup that's been sitting there since Tuesday, or liquids that never started as food and shouldn't end as food either. The bowls create obstacle courses that require careful navigation because touching them means accepting responsibility for whatever's inside, and that's a commitment nobody wants to make. Medieval furniture design prioritized function over comfort because comfort was for rich people in castles, not common folk in taverns. These benches were built to last decades, not to cradle your modern expectations. The wood is hard, the surface is uneven, and splinters are considered character-building experiences. The construction quality varies wildly depending on who built what and how drunk they were during the process. Social hierarchies play out in seating arrangements through an unspoken system of territorial claims and strategic positioning. The spots near the fire belong to whoever got there first and can defend their position through intimidation, bribery, or sheer stubborn persistence. Being close to the hearth means warmth, better lighting, and the social status that comes with premium real estate. Everyone else gets whatever's left, which usually means the cold, damp spots near the door where every opening brings fresh blasts of medieval weather. The negotiation process begins when you identify a potentially survivable seating option. You approach carefully, making eye contact with current occupants to gauge their willingness to share versus their ability to cause physical harm. The snoring farmer on your left might be unconscious, but his elbow positioning suggests he's claimed more space than his body actually occupies. The person on your right could be friendly, could be dangerous, or could be dead. The lighting makes it hard to tell the difference. Communication becomes crucial when requesting seating space from people who may or may not be conscious. A gentle nudge might wake someone who's grateful for the human contact, or it might trigger a violent response from someone who's been saving that spot for 3 hours. The art of medieval seating negotiation involves reading body language, assessing threat levels, and having an escape plan ready when diplomatic solutions fail. Testing potential seating involves a careful process of weight distribution and moisture assessment. You start by placing one hand on the bench to check for structural integrity, wetness levels, and anything that moves when it shouldn't. The wood might be solid, might be rotting, or might be held together by accumulated grime and wishful thinking. Your hand serves as an advanced scout, gathering intelligence about surface conditions before committing your full body weight to the situation. The moisture test reveals critical information about what you're getting into. Dampness could indicate recent spills, could mean the wood is absorbing atmospheric humidity, or could suggest biological processes you don't want to investigate further. Some wetness is inevitable in an environment where spilled drinks are considered normal and indoor plumbing is still a pipe dream. The question isn't whether the seat is dry, it's whether the wetness will transfer to your clothes in socially acceptable patterns. Structural integrity testing involves gradually applying pressure while remaining ready to abort the seating mission if the bench shows signs of imminent collapse. Some benches can support a horse, others struggle with the weight of ambitious squirrels. You learn to distribute your weight carefully and keep your center of gravity positioned for quick evacuation if necessary. The moment of commitment arrives when you finally lower yourself onto the chosen spot and accept whatever consequences follow. Your clothing immediately begins absorbing whatever substances have made the bench their permanent home. The wood's temperature tells you stories about previous occupants that you probably don't want to know. Your body heat starts mixing with existing thermal signatures, creating a personalized seating experience that will follow you home in aromatic form. Seating arrangements follow the rule of first come, first soaked, and your pants may not survive the experience. The bench claims you as much as you claim it, creating a relationship that's both intimate and completely unwanted. Your clothing becomes part of the tavern's ecosystem, absorbing decades of accumulated atmosphere in concentrated doses. But you're sitting down, you're part of the community, and now you face the next challenge, figuring out what exactly passes for refreshment in this establishment. Your drink options are ale, mead, cider, or shut up and drink it, served with a side of mystery floaties. The beverage selection in medieval taverns operated on the principle of limited choices and zero complaints. You get what's available, you drink what's served, and you thank the tavern keeper for not actively trying to poison you. Water represents a death sentence in liquid form, which explains why everyone from toddlers to grandmothers starts their day with alcohol. Medieval water sources collect runoff from everything upstream, including human waste, dead animals, and whatever chemicals people dump because they don't know better. Drinking water means playing Russian roulette with invisible microscopic enemies that will turn your intestines into a battlefield. Smart medieval people learned early that fermented beverages kill the bad stuff, even if they also kill brain cells and decision-making abilities. The uncertainty around what you're about to consume creates genuine suspense about whether tonight ends with pleasant intoxication or violent intestinal rebellion. Medieval brewing operates without quality control standards, health inspectors, or anyone who particularly cares if your drink meets modern safety expectations. Each mug represents a gamble where the stakes are your digestive system and the house always wins eventually. The ale situation deserves special attention because it dominates the medieval drinking landscape like a lukewarm, cloudy dictator. This isn't the clean, filtered beer that modern drinkers expect. Medieval ale comes enhanced with bonus ingredients that weren't part of the original recipe. Grain bits float like tiny brown islands in the cloudy sea of fermented liquid. Twigs appear because someone thought the brewing pot needed more fiber. Someone's facial hair inevitably finds its way into the mix because medieval hygiene standards and brewing practices intersect in unfortunate ways. Medieval brewing techniques produced ale that had to be consumed within a day or two because preservation methods hadn't caught up with fermentation enthusiasm. The ale you're drinking was probably brewed in the back room where the dog sleeps, using equipment that serves multiple purposes throughout the day. That brewing pot might double as a cooking vessel, a washing basin, or storage for items that have nothing to do with beverages. The brewing process relies on wild yeast that floats through the air, landing wherever it wants and fermenting whatever seems fermentable. Ale conners were sworn officials who tested quality and presented brewing failures to court, though they only visited occasionally, leaving plenty of room for creativity in brewing methods. These quality inspectors existed to maintain some semblance of standards, but their sporadic appearances meant most ale reached customers without official approval or disapproval. Mead offers a touch of luxury for those willing to pay premium prices for honey wine that might explode your evening in unexpected directions. Think of it as medieval Odin's skull mead, a drink that could either grant you wisdom or knock you unconscious, depending on the batch. This alcoholic beverage ferments honey with water, creating a drink that ranges from pleasantly sweet to aggressively potent, depending on storage conditions and brewing accidents. Mead's strength varies wildly because medieval measurements operated on approximations rather than precise calculations. Storage methods for mead involve whatever containers the tavern keeper could acquire, maintain, or steal from previous customers. Wooden barrels, clay pots, and metal containers all impart their own special flavors to the honey wine. The storage location matters too. Mead stored near the kitchen absorbs cooking smells, while mead stored in the cellar develops earthy undertones from proximity to things that live underground. Temperature fluctuations create fermentation surprises that turn predictable drinks into alcoholic adventures. Cider represents the regional favorite in areas where apple orchards outnumber common sense. Medieval cider makers used apples in various stages of decay because wasting fruit meant wasting money, and medieval economics prioritized profit over palatability. Fresh apples mixed with questionable apples created cider with complex flavor profiles that ranged from refreshing to revolting within the same batch. Storage practices for cider followed the same random principles as other tavern beverages, resulting in drinks that evolved continuously until someone consumed them or they achieved sentience. Wine appears on tavern menus with heavy disclaimers about quality, origin, and realistic expectations. Unless you're in Southern Europe or possess noble status, wine comes watered down and served with sarcasm about your drinking standards. Red wine from Gascony cost about 3 pennies a gallon, making quality wine financially inaccessible to most tavern customers who had to settle for whatever liquid claimed to be wine adjacent. The moment of truth arrives when the tavern keeper presents your chosen beverage in a wooden mug that carries its own ecosystem of previous drinkers and questionable residue. These mugs were made from wood, clay, or tin, and cleaning between customers involved whatever cleaning method seemed convenient at the time. Your mug might still contain traces of last night's stew, yesterday's ale, or substances that never started as food and shouldn't end as food either. Receiving your beverage involves a ritual of visual inspection, tentative sniffing, and psychological preparation for whatever's about to happen. The drink arrives lukewarm because medieval taverns lacked refrigeration, ice, or concepts of temperature preference beyond not frozen solid. Floaties dance in the liquid like tiny performers celebrating their freedom from whatever brewing process created them. These mysterious particles could be grain remnants, fermentation byproducts, or hitchhikers from the brewing environment. Still, with water guaranteed to kill you, you lift the mug and brace yourself. Your drink now comes with bonus floaties and a prayer that your stomach is stronger than your common sense. The floating particles add texture and mystery to every sip, creating drinking experiences that range from mildly unpleasant to genuinely memorable for all the wrong reasons. Your digestive system prepares for chemical warfare, while your brain tries to process alcohol that might be stronger than advertised, weaker than hoped, or contaminated with ingredients that weren't part of anyone's recipe. The tavern keeper watches your reaction with the detached interest of someone who's seen this scenario play out countless times before. But liquid courage is just the beginning of your medieval dining adventure, and something tells you the food situation is about to make the drinks look like the safe option. Tonight's dinner special is a stew that's been simmering since Monday, replenished daily as a hunter's pot, where ingredients get added as portions get removed. This isn't a fresh meal prepared to order. This is pottage, the medieval solution to continuous hunger and limited cooking resources. The massive iron pot hanging over the fire contains whatever got tossed in throughout the past several days. Each ladleful represents archaeological layers of tavern history, where Monday's rabbit mingles with Tuesday's mystery bird and Wednesday's regret about eating at this place again. Medieval tavern food operates on the concept of perpetual cooking, where meals never really end, they just evolve into something completely different. The cooking process runs continuously because stopping means starting over, and fuel costs plus resource scarcity made continuous cooking the only economical option. This system created stews that maintained themselves through constant motion and hope, developing flavors that would make modern food scientists weep with confusion and terror. Here's the twist that makes medieval dining an adventure in biological warfare. You have no idea what's floating in that pot, whether those chunks are rabbit, bird, or something that wandered in from behind the tavern. Medieval food labeling consists of pointing at the pot and saying stew, leaving identification entirely to your digestive system's sense of adventure. The perpetual nature of these stews created remarkable longevity. Some Japanese establishments have served the same broth since 1945, while one place in Perpignan, France, served the same stew from the 15th century until World War II, when they could no longer obtain the necessary ingredients. The stew ecosystem operates as a constantly changing mixture where each day brings new ingredients based on what the tavern keeper could acquire, afford, or catch behind the building. Fresh vegetables get added when available. Leftover bread gets tossed in when it reaches the consistency of building materials. Herbs appear when someone remembers that food should have flavor beyond brown and chunky. Food preservation techniques were basically non-existent, which explains why everything got thrown into the communal pot, regardless of its original condition or species identification. Without refrigeration, freezing, or proper storage methods, ingredients had to be consumed quickly or risk becoming biological weapons. The perpetual stew solved this problem by cooking everything at temperatures hot enough to kill most dangerous organisms, though most leaves plenty of room for culinary Russian roulette. Medieval tavern stews included recipes like bocanade, which could contain veal, kid goat, or hen, along with herbs and spices like parsley, sage, hyssop, mace, cloves, and saffron. The recipe involved boiling the meat, straining the broth, and adding ingredients such as egg yolks, ginger, verjuice, and salt. This sounds fancy until you realize that most tavern versions substituted expensive ingredients with whatever seemed close enough or happened to be available. The communal pot never gets fully clean, just refreshed with new ingredients, and hope that yesterday's mistakes won't poison today's customers. Cleaning would mean emptying the entire pot, scrubbing it down, and starting the cooking process from scratch. Instead, the pot gets topped off with fresh water, new ingredients, and whatever prayers seem appropriate. The bottom layers develop flavors that science hasn't identified yet, creating taste profiles that range from surprisingly pleasant to aggressively memorable. Quality control in medieval taverns operated on the principle that if nobody died immediately, the food was probably safe enough for paying customers. Some taverns offered victuals of the best kind, while others provided whatever wouldn't actively kill the majority of their clientele. The cooking process relied on high temperatures and long cooking times to neutralize most biological threats, though medieval understanding of food safety operated more on hope than scientific knowledge. The ingredients added to tavern stews reflected seasonal availability, economic circumstances, and whatever the tavern keeper could acquire through legal or questionable means. Vegetables appeared when gardens produced excess crops. Grains got added when bread became too stale for even medieval standards. Meat arrived when animals died naturally, accidentally, or through strategic tavern keeper intervention behind the building where nobody asked questions. Serving methods for medieval stew involved ladles, wooden bowls, and acceptance that your meal's appearance might not match its actual contents. The thick consistency hid ingredient identification until you actually bit into something, creating surprise discoveries throughout the eating process. Some chunks were recognizable, others required faith and strong digestive systems. The bread served alongside was often tough and dark, providing something solid to balance the liquid mystery in your bowl. The moment arrives when you must decide whether hunger outweighs self-preservation instincts, screaming warnings about consuming substances of unknown origin and questionable storage methods. Your empty stomach argues with your survival instincts, while the tavern keeper waits with practiced patience for your decision. The stew smells better than it looks, which isn't saying much since it looks like something that escaped from an alchemy experiment gone wrong. Medieval dining experiences prioritized survival over palatability, creating meals that filled stomachs and provided essential calories regardless of flavor preferences or ingredient identification. The communal nature of tavern dining meant everyone shared the same risks, the same mystery ingredients, and the same hope that tonight's stew wouldn't require last rites afterward. Food safety standards consisted of, "It hasn't killed anyone yet, and the fire's been burning long enough to cook most problems." It's Mystery Meat Monday, but it's Thursday, and your spoon might be your hand because utensils were suggestions rather than guarantees in medieval tavern dining. The stew continues bubbling, adding new layers of complexity with each passing hour. Your hunger makes the decision easier as survival instincts surrender to immediate nutritional needs. The tavern keeper ladles a generous portion into your wooden bowl, creating ripples in the brown liquid that reveal floating mysteries you'll discover one bite at a time. And just as you taste your first bite, the tavern's true entertainment begins. The acoustic assault begins immediately as competing voices create a symphony of chaos that makes modern concerts seem peaceful by comparison. Medieval taverns operated as vibrant hubs of social activity, far exceeding their function as mere drinking establishments. They served as dynamic centers for entertainment, where knights, farmers, and bards converged to gamble, drink, and engage in communal gatherings. This created an environment where silence was impossible and background noise was provided by humans who believed their thoughts deserved public broadcast at maximum volume. The moment you sit down, you're conscripted into the tavern's entertainment squad whether you want to or not. Your conversations become part of someone else's background noise. Your laughter encourages the bard who should have stopped singing hours ago. Your presence validates the storyteller who's explaining why his life is more interesting than everyone else's combined. Personal space doesn't exist, and neither does the option to be a quiet observer in this medieval social experiment. The overwhelming cacophony includes the clinking of mugs, boisterous laughter, the telling of stories, loud shouting, and even the occasional misinterpretation of scripture. Add the bartender's calls, the barmaid's rebukes, and the bard's music, and you get relentless noise that's both overwhelming and contagious. Every voice competes for dominance in an acoustic arms race where volume equals importance and loudness determines social standing. The bard situation deserves special attention because these entertainers possessed questionable musical talent but unlimited confidence in their artistic abilities. Medieval bards were integral to tavern entertainment, often performing with varying degrees of musical skill. These performers, sometimes lacking teeth, would sing about everything from tales of heartbreak and heroism to goats or vegetables. Even establishments like Chaucer's famous Tavern, known for strong wine and good cheer, featured these enthusiastic entertainers whose passion for their craft far exceeded their actual skill level. Tonight's musical selection includes ballads about vegetables with complicated emotional lives and epic tales of heroism that definitely happened exactly as described. The bard near the fireplace insists that turnips are metaphors for unrequited love, supporting this theory through increasingly questionable poetry. His voice cracks on the high notes, but his enthusiasm never wavers. The audience participation is mandatory because medieval taverns operated on the principle that everyone's artistic contribution made the experience better, regardless of evidence to the contrary. Medieval entertainment traditions created this communal performance atmosphere where storytelling was a cornerstone of tavern life. Patrons shared tales and anecdotes that were often embellished or entirely fictional. This practice served as a means of connection and community building, considered a tradition that forged bonds and created both friends and enemies within the tavern's walls. Every customer became a potential entertainer with stories that improved dramatically with each retelling and cup of ale. The competing narratives create layers of fiction that would make modern novelists jealous. The war veteran in the corner describes battles that never happened against enemies that never existed, using tactical knowledge he gained from other people's imaginary war stories. His audience nods knowingly because questioning military tales is dangerous, and everyone prefers entertaining lies to boring truth. Meanwhile, the confused monk attempts to share religious wisdom, but keeps mixing up biblical stories with tavern gossip, creating new theological interpretations that would horrify actual church officials. Traveling entertainers added professional chaos to the amateur entertainment already filling the space. These bards and minstrels moved from town to town in exchange for payment in coins, meals, and lodging. Their songs and tales were often designed to stir up the crowd, making them a potentially volatile element in the tavern's social dynamics. Professional entertainers understood that controversy sold better than quality, so they specialized in songs that started arguments and stories that offended someone's honor. The golden rule of tavern entertainment was to never let facts ruin a good story, ensuring that truth took second place to entertainment value. But what happens when facts collide with free ale? That's when stories go haywire. Historical accuracy meant nothing when a good story could buy another round of drinks. Personal experiences became epic adventures through creative editing. Minor inconveniences transformed into life-threatening challenges. Everyone was the hero of their own increasingly fictional narrative, and the audience pretended to believe every word because the alternative was admitting their own stories were equally questionable. Communal singing represented the pinnacle of medieval tavern entertainment, where the audience often joined performances to create a unique form of harmony born from disorder. The entire room would suddenly burst into song, usually something everyone half remembered from childhood or made up on the spot. Key signatures were suggestions, rhythm was optional, and lyrics changed based on who was singing loudest. The result was musical chaos that somehow worked, because everyone was equally drunk and equally committed to the performance. The noise level increases throughout the evening as alcohol consumption enhances everyone's confidence in their entertainment abilities. Stories get louder, songs get longer, and philosophical discussions about vegetables become more passionate. The noise was both relentless and contagious, creating an environment where silence felt uncomfortable and participation was inevitable. Your voice joins the chaos because resisting the acoustic assault requires more energy than surrendering to it. The entire tavern operates as one giant musical instrument played by dozens of drunk people who can't agree on the song but refuse to stop performing. Every conversation becomes a duet, every story becomes a performance, and every laugh becomes part of the tavern's official soundtrack. This chaos creates unexpected opportunities for human connection because shared acoustic trauma bonds people faster than normal social interaction. The communal storytelling forges genuine bonds between strangers, creating relationships built on shared tales and mutual survival of the evening's entertainment assault. But the noise and stories are just setting the stage for something even more unpredictable brewing in the ale-soaked atmosphere around you. Love blooms in this chaos through intimacy born of shared stew and impounded embarrassment. Medieval taverns served as unlikely stages for romance, where social boundaries blurred and the potential for connection mixed with the scent of unwashed bodies and spilled drinks. The atmosphere created a unique blend of rowdiness and intimacy that made these establishments perfect for courtship rituals that would horrify modern dating experts. Here, romance bloomed in circumstances that seemed designed to prevent it, fueled by alcohol and the strange intimacy that comes from sharing questionable stew with complete strangers. Medieval tavern courtship operated without dating apps, privacy, or basic hygiene standards that modern romance requires. The close proximity of strangers, combined with alcohol consumption and the temporary suspension of social norms, created an environment where anything could happen. Knights sat next to farmers, bards shared benches with merchants, and everyone's judgment became increasingly impaired as the evening progressed. This mixing happened because taverns sold wine, ale houses sold ale, and inns offered lodging, but all three brought different social classes shoulder to shoulder in ways that normal medieval society never allowed. The awkwardness of flirting in a crowded, noisy space reaches legendary levels when privacy doesn't exist, and everyone's judgment is compromised by fermented beverages. Every romantic gesture becomes public entertainment for dozens of drunk observers who provide commentary, advice, and mockery in equal measure. Your attempt to whisper sweet nothings gets drowned out by someone singing about turnips 3 tables away. Personal conversations become group discussions whether you want them to or not. The absence of private spaces means your romantic failures are witnessed by an audience that will remember them long after you've forgotten why you thought this was a good idea. Which awkward approach will win the day? A turnip poem or a shared bread crust? Pickup lines in medieval taverns demonstrate creativity born from desperation and agricultural metaphors that would make modern dating coaches weep. Drunk farmers compare your eyes to root vegetables with the sincere belief that this represents peak romantic poetry. Your beauty shines brighter than a well-tended turnip patch, becomes a compliment that someone actually delivers with a straight face. Bards offer to carry your stew romantically, as if transporting questionable liquid meals represents the height of chivalrous behavior. These approaches lack subtlety because subtlety requires sobriety, and sobriety defeats the entire purpose of tavern socializing. Medieval courtship practices in taverns reflected the reality that most social interaction happened in public spaces, where alcohol lowered inhibitions and encouraged direct approaches. Social mixing occurred naturally because taverns served as community gathering places where different classes converged for entertainment, food, and drinks. The consumption of ale, mead, and cider created a boozy boldness that fueled romantic encounters while simultaneously increasing the potential for awkwardness and misunderstandings. This environment encouraged patrons to express feelings more openly than they would in sober daylight, leading to both connection and spectacular social disasters. The bread crust economy transforms food items into tokens of affection, where stale rolls become the flowers of medieval courtship. Sharing a piece of bread signals romantic interest more effectively than sonnets, because food represents survival, and survival represents commitment in an era where both are uncertain. A man offering his last crust to a woman makes a statement about priorities that speaks louder than poetry. The gesture says, "I would rather go hungry than watch you starve," which hits differently when hunger is a genuine daily concern rather than waiting too long between meals. Food sharing creates intimate moments in the chaos of communal dining, where passing a bowl of stew becomes foreplay, and offering your meat chunk represents serious romantic intentions. The simple act of letting someone eat from your wooden bowl establishes a level of trust and intimacy that modern couples achieve through months of careful dating. When your mouth touches the same wooden rim that someone else's mouth touched, you're basically married by medieval hygiene standards. This bread crust economy operates on scarcity principles, where generosity with food proves genuine affection better than expensive gifts that most people couldn't afford anyway. The scene unfolds with perfect medieval romance when a nun finds herself being serenaded by a tone-deaf bard who believes religious women need musical entertainment about secular love affairs. His voice cracks on every high note while he explains through song why her devotion to God is admirable but her beauty deserves earthly appreciation. Meanwhile, someone else proposes combining finances over a wooden mug because two people splitting tavern expenses makes more economic sense than dying alone and poor. These alcohol-fueled romantic encounters produce unpredictable outcomes that range from genuine connection to complete disaster, often within the same evening. The combination of lowered inhibitions, close proximity, and questionable decision-making skills creates situations where anything can happen. Romance blooms between people who might never speak to each other when sober. Marriages get proposed after 3 hours of acquaintance and 2 gallons of ale. Deep emotional connections form over shared bowls of mystery stew, creating bonds that seem profound until morning sobriety provides perspective on the previous night's enthusiasm. Women in medieval taverns navigate this romantic landscape with sharp wit and survival instincts that help them distinguish between harmless drunken flirtation and genuine threats to their safety. These women, whether traveling merchants, tavern staff, or simply customers seeking entertainment, understand that managing male attention requires strategy, humor, and occasionally violence. They've mastered the art of deflecting unwanted advances while encouraging acceptable ones, creating a social dynamic where mutual consent operates through nonverbal communication and shared understanding of tavern social rules. The potential for violence lurks beneath every romantic interaction because jealousy, alcohol, and medieval concepts of honor create explosive combinations that can turn flirtation into bloodshed. A stolen glance at someone else's romantic interest triggers confrontations that escalate from verbal challenges to physical altercations. Wandering hands meet angry fists. Jealous outbursts disrupt romantic moments and transform intimate conversations into public brawls. The close proximity of patrons means conflicts spread quickly through the crowd, turning personal romantic disputes into community entertainment that nobody asked for, but everyone gets anyway. Medieval flirting lacks subtlety because alcohol and social desperation eliminate the patience required for sophisticated courtship techniques. Direct approaches work better when everyone's judgment is impaired and time feels limited. One man slurs, "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the hearth," only to receive a bread crust hurled at his forehead, proving that even drunk medieval women maintain standards about acceptable romantic poetry. The directness reflects the unfiltered nature of tavern life, where social masks disappear and people reveal their true personalities, for better or worse. You might find love, a black eye, or wake up missing a shoe, possibly all three, depending on how the evening unfolds and whose romantic territory you accidentally wander into. The medieval tavern creates an environment where romance equals charm, chance, and not falling face first into your bowl mid-sentence while declaring eternal devotion to someone whose name you forgot immediately after hearing it. This romantic chaos builds tension that reaches a breaking point when competing affections, wounded pride, and medieval concepts of honor collide. The atmosphere grows thick with more than just smoke and ale vapors, as jealous glances turn into angry stares, and romantic rivalry transforms into something far more dangerous. One spilled mug triggers the inevitable explosion, as someone yells, "Hold my bread," and launches themselves over a bench with all the grace of a drunk catapult. Medieval tavern brawls erupted faster than you could say, "Pass the ale," transforming friendly evening conversation into chaotic violence that nobody planned but everyone participated in anyway. The transition from jovial drinking to actual combat happened in seconds, usually triggered by something so ridiculous that sober people would laugh it off. But sobriety wasn't part of the tavern experience, and wounded pride mixed with alcohol created explosive situations that turned minor disagreements into room-wide disasters. The atmosphere shifts from jovial chaos to actual violence over incidents that would barely register in normal circumstances, but medieval taverns operated by different rules, where honor mattered more than common sense. Someone makes a joke about another person's wife, mother, or livestock. A gambling dispute erupts over whether dice were loaded or luck was just terrible. Territorial conflicts develop when someone claims a seat that belongs to someone else's imaginary kingdom. These trivial triggers ignite tempers that alcohol has been preparing for combustion all evening long. The chain reaction begins with mathematical precision, as one small incident triggers a room-wide explosion. Medieval taverns packed people together like sardines in a wooden can, so personal disputes automatically became community events that sucked in innocent bystanders who just wanted to finish their mystery stew in peace. Medieval conflict resolution in taverns followed the principle that violence was inevitable but hopefully brief, allowing normal drinking activities to resume as quickly as possible. Suddenly, it's on the tavern as fights erupted over seemingly trivial matters that quickly escalated into chaotic scenes. The combination of alcohol, close proximity, and generally rough atmosphere created volatile environments where disputes easily turned physical with little provocation. These brawls represented community bonding experiences that brought people together through shared violence and mutual confusion about what started the whole mess. The comedy of errors aspect reaches peak performance when everyone's too drunk to fight effectively but too proud to back down from challenges they can barely remember issuing. Coordination disappears completely as alcohol impairs motor skills, depth perception, and decision-making abilities simultaneously. People swing wildly, miss, trip, and land in someone's dinner while attempting combat maneuvers that would challenge sober athletes. Punches aimed at faces connect with wooden beams instead. Kicks intended for shins hit innocent chairs that never participated in the original dispute. But when the benches start flying, how do you stay upright? The bread gets dropped, forgotten in the excitement of attempted heroics. Other patrons scramble to protect their food from airborne humans, while simultaneously trying to avoid getting caught in expanding combat zones that consume the entire tavern floor. Chairs start flying because furniture becomes weaponry when actual weapons remain safely secured, creating aerial displays of medieval interior design that nobody ordered. Dogs bark frantically as their peaceful evening gets disrupted by humans behaving worse than animals. The tavern's resident chickens squawk in protest, while seeking shelter under tables that offer questionable protection from the chaos above. Even the livestock understands that humans have lost their minds and need supervision from more reasonable creatures. People forget mid-fight why they were angry in the first place, leading to surreal moments where combatants pause to ask their opponents about the original source of conflict. "Wait, why are we fighting?" becomes a common question shouted over the noise of continuing violence. Someone explains that it started with spilled ale, but that person is unconscious now. Another voice suggests it was about gambling, but the dice disappeared under someone's unconscious body. The confusion spreads faster than the actual fighting. Most fights stayed at fisticuffs. Drawing steel risked royal punishment or guild penalties. Weapons remain mostly absent from these brawls, because most people understood that pulling a blade could transform casual entertainment into actual tragedy that nobody wanted to explain to authorities. Drawing steel turned simple disputes into serious crimes that carried consequences beyond hangovers and bruised egos. The fights stayed comedic rather than deadly, because participants maintained enough sense to avoid escalating beyond fists, furniture, and flying food items that couldn't cause permanent damage to anything except dignity and clean clothing. The anticlimactic resolution arrives when exhaustion and confusion finally overcome alcohol and pride, ending conflicts that began for reasons nobody remembers anymore. Combatants collapse from fatigue rather than injury, creating piles of unconscious humans who will wake up tomorrow with mysterious bruises and no clear memory of how they acquired them. The fighting stops not because anyone won, but because everyone forgot what winning looked like in situations where the original goals disappeared under layers of alcohol and accumulated confusion. And here's the strange part. Once it's over as tavern brawls conclude without grudges, lawsuits, or long-term consequences that modern conflicts generate. The aftermath involves quick cleanup, mug refilling, and resumption of normal tavern activities like nothing happened. Bards resume their performances about turnips and romantic vegetables. Patrons laugh again, including the person with the bleeding nose who thinks the whole experience was hilarious. The fights become part of the evening's entertainment rather than serious conflicts requiring resolution or revenge. This is Fight Club, but everyone's too drunk to win, and it ends when someone passes out or forgets the point of participating in violence that never had clear objectives anyway. Medieval tavern combat represented community bonding through shared chaos rather than serious attempts to inflict damage or resolve disputes. The experience created stories that would be retold for weeks, embellished with each telling, until simple bar fights became epic battles between heroes and villains who were actually just drunk farmers arguing about livestock prices. The excitement dies down as quickly as it erupted, leaving the tavern floor covered with unconscious patrons, scattered furniture, and evidence of the evening's entertainment that will need cleaning before tomorrow's customers arrive. And after the dust settles, you'll wish you'd learned how to duck faster than you learned how to drink. But through all this chaos, one figure has been watching, calculating, and preparing to restore order through methods that make the brawl look like gentle entertainment. She stands behind the bar as the one-person institution, bartender, judge, and bouncer, wielding a ladle with more authority than most nobles command with their swords. Ever seen a ladle more feared than a sword? You will. The tavern keeper operates as the undisputed ruler of this chaotic kingdom, wielding authority that would make medieval lords jealous. This person doesn't need a crown or royal blood to command absolute respect from everyone who enters their domain. One look from those eyes can silence a room full of drunk farmers arguing about livestock prices. One gesture with that ladle can end disputes that seemed ready to escalate into full-scale warfare. The tavern keeper controls this chaos through sheer force of personality and strategic ladle deployment that strikes fear into the hearts of troublemakers and chronic debt avoiders. They've mastered the art of crowd control without modern riot gear, using nothing but kitchen utensils and decades of experience dealing with humans at their absolute worst. Their presence alone maintains order in a space where order shouldn't be possible. When fights break out, This person doesn't call security. They are the security, armed with whatever cooking implements happen to be within reach. Crossing this person means facing justice that's swift, creative, and historically sanctioned. If a taverner sold adulterated wine or ale, they faced pillory or stocks under medieval law, giving tavern keepers legal backing for their iron-fisted rule. The tavern keeper's justice operates on these medieval principles where punishment fits the crime and public humiliation serves as effective deterrent. Steal a drink? Your next 3 visits involve washing dishes until your fingers prune. Start a fight? You'll find yourself permanently banned from the warmest spot near the fire. Disrespect the establishment? That ladle becomes a precision instrument of correction that aims for whatever body part seems most appropriate for attitude adjustment. The tavern keeper juggles multiple roles that would challenge modern multitasking experts. They serve as bartender, mixing drinks that might kill you or cure what ails you, depending on their mood and your payment history. As accountant, they track every debt, every payment, and every outstanding tab without writing anything down because medieval literacy rates made written records useless for most customers. Their bouncer duties involve removing troublemakers through methods that range from firm escort to creative ejection techniques involving momentum and gravity. They also heard confessions about failed marriages and romantic disasters as part of crowd control, listening with the patience of someone managing human chaos daily. Medieval business management required skills that modern MBA programs don't teach. Tavern keepers operated complex social ecosystems where customer satisfaction meant keeping people happy enough to pay their bills, but not so happy that they destroyed the furniture. They balanced inventory management with crowd control, financial accounting with conflict resolution, and customer service with survival instincts that kept them alive in dangerous times. The debt memorization system operates like a medieval credit bureau housed entirely in one person's brain that never forgets and rarely forgives financial obligations. Behind the bar, they keep mental tabs on who's paid, who owes, and who's had 3 too many, and they do it all without writing anything down, because medieval literacy might be rare. But tavern memory is terrifying. This mental accounting system tracks not just money owed, but favors granted, insults received, and social debts that accumulate over months of tavern interactions. Their memory extends beyond financial records to include personal information that makes them the medieval equivalent of social media databases. They know who's cheating on their spouse, who's lying about their occupation, and who arrived in town under suspicious circumstances. This information becomes currency that can be traded, weapons that can be deployed, or leverage that ensures continued good behavior from customers who prefer their secrets remain secret. Baroom justice gets dispensed through flying ladles, strategic ale denial, and death stares that could stop time and freeze troublemakers mid-misbehavior. The tavern keeper's methods of maintaining order involve creative applications of kitchen equipment that transform cooking utensils into instruments of behavioral correction. A well-aimed ladle to the forehead delivers messages about acceptable conduct more effectively than lengthy explanations about tavern rules and social expectations. They greet regulars with a nod, strangers with suspicion, and troublemakers with a tankard to the head, demonstrating their ability to assess threats and respond appropriately within seconds of customer arrival. This instant evaluation system determines whether you'll receive friendly service, cautious accommodation, or immediate ejection, depending on factors that include your appearance, your companions, and your reputation in the local community. The tavern keeper's mood determines the entire establishment's atmosphere because their emotional state spreads through the room like weather patterns affecting everyone's experience. The tavern keeper sets the tone. If they're in a good mood, the place hums. If they're in a bad mood, you'd better drink fast and keep your jokes to yourself. Happy tavern keepers create environments where laughter flows freely and customers feel welcome. Angry tavern keepers generate tension that makes everyone nervous about saying the wrong thing or making sudden movements. Their approval or disapproval shapes every interaction within the tavern walls. Customers they like receive generous pours, comfortable seating near the fire, and protection from aggressive drunks looking for fights. Customers they dislike get watered-down drinks, seats near the drafty door, and absolutely no intervention when trouble finds them. This power over customer experience makes tavern keeper approval more valuable than gold coins because comfort and safety depend entirely on their goodwill. They're the referee in every argument, the judge in every cheating scandal, and the first to grab a club when a fight breaks out, highlighting their role as the ultimate authority in disputes that range from trivial disagreements to serious conflicts requiring immediate intervention. Their decisions are final because there's no higher authority to appeal to within the tavern's jurisdiction. Justice is whatever the tavern keeper says it is, administered however they see fit. The tavern keeper often employs family members or adopted strays who help manage the overwhelming workload required to keep chaos from becoming complete anarchy. Some have a helper, a son, daughter, spouse, or orphan they sort of adopted, who now carries barrels twice their weight. These assistants learn the business through trial by fire, developing skills that include avoiding flying objects during brawls and memorizing customer preferences without getting caught in romantic entanglements or political disputes. The tavern keeper will judge you now, and their smile only appears to silence a room before justice strikes with the precision of someone who's perfected the art of crowd control through decades of dealing with humanity's worst impulses. That smile warns everyone that something unpleasant is about to happen to someone who probably deserves it. The room goes quiet because experience has taught customers that smiling tavern keepers are more dangerous than angry ones, and smart people find somewhere else to be when that particular expression appears on the person who controls the ale supply. Once order's restored and the evening winds down, you face another challenge entirely. The tavern keeper's authority extends beyond keeping peace. They also control who sleeps where, and the options aren't promising. Your luxury accommodations tonight include a shared straw mattress between two snoring men and a chicken that apparently has squatters' rights. Medieval tavern sleeping arrangements operated on the principle that privacy was for rich people, and personal space was a concept that wouldn't be invented for several centuries. The idea of individual rooms with private beds belonged to fantasy literature, not medieval reality. Your sleeping experience involves sharing everything with strangers whose names you don't know and whose personal habits you're about to discover in uncomfortable detail. Medieval tavern sleeping arrangements treated privacy as a luxury that most travelers couldn't afford and didn't expect anyway. Lodging in medieval taverns, particularly in rooms that offered overnight stays, was far from private, often accommodating multiple individuals who did not know each other. Inns sometimes crammed 10 to 12 people into a single room, with even beds shared among strangers. The entire concept of personal sleeping space was foreign because resources were limited, and maximizing profit meant squeezing as many paying customers as possible into whatever space was available. Your bedroom for the night might contain 5 other people, 3 dogs, and livestock that nobody bothered to relocate. The mattress ecosystem represents centuries of accumulated human contact in straw form that's absorbed every possible bodily fluid from previous occupants. This straw stuffing has seen better decades, compressed into lumpy formations that create hills and valleys across the sleeping surface. The bedding contains what medieval people fondly called companions, fleas, lice, and other creatures that consider human blood their primary food source. You're sharing this paradise with people whose names you don't know, but whose habits you're discovering through forced intimacy. Plus, medieval lodging practices prioritized efficiency over comfort because travelers needed shelter more than luxury accommodations. If a bed was available, it was typically shared by several people. The establishments maximized their profit by fitting as many paying customers as possible into available sleeping spaces. This system worked because medieval people understood that sleeping indoors with strangers was infinitely better than sleeping outdoors with wolves, bandits, and weather that could kill you before morning arrived. Inn accommodations offered slightly better conditions for travelers who could afford premium lodging, but even these upscale establishments operated on sharing principles. Inns, the most upscale of the medieval lodging options, were primarily designed for overnight stays, often situated near city gates or a day's journey between towns. These establishments provided food and drink exclusively to overnight guests, creating a bed and breakfast atmosphere where comfort still meant sharing space with multiple strangers in conditions that modern travelers would consider emergency situations. The hierarchy of sleeping spots creates a medieval caste system where your social status determines your sleeping comfort level. The best spots near the hearth belonged to whoever arrived first, paid most, or intimidated everyone else into submission. For those too poor or too drunk for a room, sleeping options included a bench, a table, or a corner by the hearth, often curled up next to a dog. The coveted hearth area provides warmth that makes the difference between uncomfortable sleep and potentially fatal cold during medieval winters when heating systems consisted of hoping the fire didn't go out. Shared beds represent luxury accommodations compared to floor space that serves as sleeping areas for customers who couldn't afford mattress privileges. The wooden floors provide hard surfaces that make every sleeping position an exercise in endurance testing. Straw gets scattered across the floor to provide minimal cushioning, but this straw has absorbed months of tavern activities that make it less comfortable than it appears. Your sleeping spot might be where someone spilled their dinner, where a dog chose to relieve itself, or where last week's brawl concluded with unconscious participants. You fall asleep with boots on because removing them means trusting that they'll still be there when you wake up, and medieval theft prevention involved keeping valuable possessions attached to your body. Your dagger remains clutched tight in your hand because sleeping among strangers requires maintaining defensive capabilities even while unconscious. Personal security depends on staying ready for trouble that could arrive at any moment from any direction. Sleep becomes a strategic exercise where comfort takes second place to survival. Stay awake, or at least pretend to, as the snoring competition begins. The growing realization hits you that you smell like 5 other people because their scents have become your scents through proximity and shared air circulation. Blankets were shared as were smells, and if someone had garlic earlier, it would become an intimate part of the dreams of those sharing the space. Every breath you take includes particles from other people's existence, while the tavern never truly quieted, filled with muttering sleepers, popping logs, and distant farts echoing through the rafters. If a tavern offered lodging, the rooms were typically small, cold, and shared. The beds were often straw-stuffed mattresses that were thin, lumpy, and crawling with companions that include fleas, considering your blood a midnight snack, lice mistaking your hair for permanent residence, and other creatures that find human warmth irresistible. The bedding ecosystem operates independently of human preferences, following biological imperatives that prioritize reproduction and feeding over guest comfort. The acceptance arrives gradually that this represents the pinnacle of available accommodations and morning can't come soon enough to end this shared sleeping nightmare. You're sleeping with strangers and fleas, and you'll wake up sore, confused, and aromatic from sharing intimate space with people whose personal hygiene standards make medieval bathroom facilities seem luxurious. Your body will ache from sleeping on surfaces designed by people who thought comfort was character weakness. Your clothes will smell like collective human existence, concentrated into textile form. But you survived another night in medieval hospitality, which makes you tougher than most modern travelers who complain when hotel Wi-Fi runs slowly. And in that cacophony of snores and smells, you realize you're part of something larger. The grand medieval caravan of humanity seeking shelter, warmth, and connection in whatever form they could find it. Morning arrives with the harsh reality that you survived a medieval tavern experience that would horrify modern health inspectors. These places created belonging through shared misery and questionable stew, bringing together different social classes in ways that inns, taverns, and alehouses each facilitated, whether through wine service, basic ale, or overnight lodging. The chaos forged bonds that proper society couldn't match. Think about modern bars and restaurants. We still gather in crowded spaces, share drinks with strangers, and tell stories that get better with each telling. Human nature hasn't changed much despite better hygiene and health codes. Next time you sip beer in peace, remember where it all began, in sticky, noisy, dangerous places that were exactly what people needed. If this chaotic scene made you appreciate modern comfort, hit like and subscribe for more mellow history escapes. Hey guys, tonight we're heading upstairs, not for more drinks, but for the true medieval challenge. Finding sleep in a room full of strangers, straw, and one very judgmental chicken. This hilarious look at medieval sleepovers will help you laugh and unwind as we explore the chaos of communal bedtime. Wait till you meet Sir Elbow in your face and discover what's moving under those shared blankets. Privacy was rare, beds were scarce, and the mystery of who's snoring about vegetables becomes your new reality. If you love weird history, drop a comment. Which tavern animal would you share a bed with, and why not the goose? Now dim the lights and let's ease into this medieval midnight adventure together. Picture this. You've survived the tavern downstairs, dodged flying stew, and now you're climbing those creaky wooden steps thinking the worst is behind you. Your legs are tired from standing around the main floor. Your ears are ringing from all the shouting and singing. You've managed to avoid getting punched by that drunk guy who kept insisting the king was actually a lizard. Now you just want somewhere quiet to rest your head. Each wooden step groans under your feet like it's warning you about something. The walls feel closer together up here. You can hear voices and strange noises coming from behind a heavy wooden door at the top of the stairs. Maybe it's just people settling in for the night. Maybe they're having quiet conversations before sleep. You're hoping for a simple room with a bed, nothing fancy. Just 4 walls and somewhere to lie down that doesn't involve hay or chickens. You reach for the door handle and push it open. What hits you first isn't what you see, but what you smell and feel. A wall of warm, thick air rushes out like someone opened an oven. It smells like wet wool and last night's stew, mixed with something else you can't identify but wish you couldn't smell. The room stretches out in front of you, and your brain takes a moment to process what you're seeing. This isn't a bedroom. This looks like someone tried to turn a barn into sleeping quarters but gave up halfway through. Straw covers most of the floor in uneven piles. Some areas have more straw than others. Some spots look like bare wooden planks where the straw has been scattered thin. Bodies fill every available space. People lie scattered across the floor like someone dropped a bag of human-shaped seeds, and they sprouted wherever they landed. Some are already asleep and snoring. Others are still moving around, trying to find comfortable positions on surfaces that clearly weren't designed for comfort. A few people sit up and look at you when you walk in, sizing you up like you might steal their spot. There's no innkeeper waiting with a room key. No one asks for your name or payment. This isn't a hotel where someone shows you to your room and explains where the bathroom is. This is just a space packed tighter than a merchant's coin purse, and you're expected to figure out the rules by watching everyone else. The beds turn out to be one giant mattress of straw that covers most of the floor. It's not individual beds pushed together. It's not even separate sleeping areas marked off somehow. It's just straw scattered around with people lying on it wherever they can find room. Some areas have been flattened by previous sleepers. Other spots still have straw piled up in lumps that look uncomfortable, but might be the only padding between you and the hard wooden floor underneath. You realize this system makes perfect sense from a medieval business perspective. Why build separate rooms when you can fit 30 people in one space? Why provide individual beds when everyone can share one big sleeping area? Why waste money on comfort when people just need somewhere to lie down that's not outside in the rain? The air feels thick with more than just smell. It's warm from all the bodies packed into one room. There's moisture from people breathing and sweating. The wooden walls don't have windows that open, so whatever air came in with you is probably the freshest air this room has seen all day. Everyone's breath mixes together into one shared atmosphere that you're now part of, whether you want to be or not. People have arranged their belongings around their sleeping spots, like they're claiming territory. A cloak spread out here, a bag placed just so there, boots positioned to mark boundaries. Some travelers have created little nests in the straw with their possessions arranged in careful patterns. Others just drop their stuff and lay down wherever they could find space. You start to understand that medieval hospitality operates on completely different rules than anything you know. Privacy isn't something you pay extra for. It's something that doesn't exist. Personal space isn't a right you have. It's a luxury no one can afford. Quiet isn't guaranteed when you rent sleeping space. It's something you hope for but don't expect. The people around you don't seem bothered by any of this. They're arranging their sleeping spots with the practiced efficiency of people who've done this many times before. They know how to claim space without starting fights. They understand which areas stay warmest during the night and which spots put you too close to the door where cold air leaks in. Medieval travelers developed their own sleeping etiquette out of necessity. You don't take more space than you need, but you don't let anyone push you into a corner either. You settle in quickly because hesitation means losing your spot to someone more decisive. You keep your valuable belongings close to your body because trust only goes so far when everyone's desperate for a good night's sleep. Welcome to communal sleeping, where privacy died sometime around the plague years and personal boundaries became suggestions rather than rules. The concept of having your own bedroom wasn't just rare in medieval times. For most people, it was completely unknown. Families slept together in one room. Servants slept wherever their masters had space. Travelers slept wherever tavern owners could fit them. This wasn't considered rough or unusual treatment. This was normal hospitality. The fact that you had a roof over your head and straw under your body meant you were doing better than people sleeping outside in ditches or under carts. The warmth from all those bodies would actually help you survive cold nights when heating a large space properly was impossible. Before you collapse, learn the unspoken code here. Rule 1, move fast or sleep standing up. Rule 2, everything you own needs to stay within arm's reach. Rule 3, the person next to you might be your pillow, your blanket, or your worst enemy before morning comes. Rule 4, expect nothing, appreciate everything, and prepare for a night unlike anything modern hotels could ever provide. But first, you need to find somewhere to actually sleep. Your eyes sweep across the room like you're studying a battlefield, ready to play the ultimate game of human Tetris. Every surface that looks remotely flat has someone's body, bag, or belongings marking it as taken. The straw creates uneven terrain with hills and valleys where previous sleepers have compressed it into personal-shaped dents. Some areas look promising until you notice a boot sticking out or an arm draped possessively over the space. You scan methodically from left to right, trying to spot any patch of straw that doesn't already belong to someone else. That corner near the wooden support beam looks decent, but there's a wet spot that might be spilled ale or something much worse. The area by the far wall seems quiet until you realize the person sleeping there has positioned their belongings where you can see them clearly. Some kept weapons within reach. That's not an accident. That's medieval home security. There's no reservation system here. No friendly innkeeper asking how many people in your party or whether you prefer a spot near the window. Medieval taverns operated on pure survival of the quickest. You either claim space fast, or you spend the night sitting upright against a wall, assuming you can find wall space that isn't already occupied by someone who got there first. Your eyes lock onto what looks like a decent area near the wall. It's not perfect, but it's got enough straw to cushion your back, and it's far enough from the door that you won't get stepped on by late arrivals. The space measures maybe 2 feet wide and 6 feet long. In modern terms, that's barely enough room for a yoga mat. In medieval terms, that's spacious luxury accommodations. But you're not the only one who's spotted this prime real estate. 3 other people have noticed the same patch of straw-covered floor. A woman carrying a large cloth bundle shifts her weight like she's preparing to move toward it. A man with mud-caked boots takes a step in that direction. Another traveler starts walking casually toward the wall, trying to look like he's not heading for the exact same spot you want. These people could size up a room faster than a pickpocket spots a full purse dangling from someone's belt. They knew how to read body language, assess competition, and move with purpose without looking desperate. Speed mattered, but so did strategy. Rush too obviously, and you might offend someone who's been drinking all evening and considers offense a personal challenge. The woman with the bundle makes her move first. She walks directly toward the wall space with confident steps that say she's done this before. The man with muddy boots hesitates for just a moment, and that hesitation costs him. Medieval tavern sleeping was like a dance where everyone knew the steps except you. Pause too long, and someone else partners up with your spot. You start moving, but now you face the real obstacle course. Getting to your target space means navigating around bodies that are already settled for the night. Each step requires careful placement. You can't step on anyone's legs, arms, or personal belongings. You can't kick someone's bag or knock over their ale cup. Most importantly, you can't wake up the wrong person. That merchant near the middle of the room has his hand resting on what looks like a very sharp knife. His other hand grips a leather pouch that probably contains more money than you'll see in months. Stepping on him would be like volunteering for a lesson in medieval conflict resolution. The woman beside him snores softly, but her eyes snap open when someone's shadow passes over her face. She's not deeply asleep. She's monitoring her surroundings even while resting. You spot the guy who's been drinking since noon sprawled across a particularly wide section of straw, his arms spread out like he's claiming extra territory through unconscious possession. His breathing has that deep, heavy rhythm of someone who won't wake up easily, but his drinking companion sits nearby, very much awake and watching everyone who passes. Wake the drunk guy, and you'll deal with his protective friend. Personal space meant nothing when 30 people shared one room. Tempers ran short when everyone was tired, uncomfortable, and protective of their few possessions. Smart travelers learned to move like ghosts through these human obstacle courses, stepping lightly and avoiding eye contact with anyone who looked territorial. Your foot finds a clear patch of floor between two sleeping forms. You shift your weight carefully, testing whether the floorboard will creak and announce your presence to everyone in the room. Medieval tavern floors were built for durability, not silence. Every step risked a groan of old wood that might wake someone who preferred their sleep undisturbed. The woman with the bundle reaches the wall space first, but she hesitates when she sees how close she'll be sleeping to a man who's been coughing intermittently. Medieval people understood that sickness spread fast in close quarters. That cough might be nothing, or it might be the beginning of something that could kill half the room before spring arrives. She pauses just long enough for you to slip past her and claim the spot. Success feels like winning a contest you didn't know you were entering. You've secured your 6 inches of straw-covered real estate before someone else could take it. The space isn't much, but it's yours for the night. The wall will support your back. The straw provides some cushioning between your body and the hard wooden floor. Most importantly, you're not sleeping outside where winter air could freeze you before morning. Other travelers settle into their claimed spaces with the efficiency of people who've mastered this routine. They arrange their belongings to mark boundaries and create small personal territories within the shared space. A cloak spread just so, boots positioned to discourage encroachment, bags placed where they'll cushion your head while protecting your possessions. You've just secured the medieval equivalent of a luxury suite. Your spot has wall support, adequate straw coverage, and you're positioned far enough from the door to avoid late-night traffic. The merchant with the knife approved your passage without incident. The drunk guy never stirred. His friend nodded acknowledgement that you moved respectfully through their territory. Congratulations, you've passed the first test of tavern survival. You found space without starting fights, stepping on anyone important, or waking up someone who might have strong opinions about sleep interruption. You found your spot, but pillow options will surprise you more than you expect. Something soft to rest your head on becomes the next challenge, and the options are definitely more creative than anything you'd find in a modern hotel. You look around for a pillow and quickly realize that nobody here brought fancy bedding from home. Medieval travelers packed light because every extra ounce meant more weight to carry on foot or horseback. Pillows weren't essential survival gear. Food, water, and basic clothing took priority over comfort items that served no purpose beyond making sleep slightly more pleasant. The soft-looking mound near your head catches your attention. It's roughly pillow-shaped and positioned perfectly for where you want to rest your head. The surface looks like it might be made of cloth or leather, maybe stuffed with something soft. You reach toward it slowly, hoping you've discovered an abandoned pillow left behind by a previous traveler who packed in a hurry. Your hand touches the surface and immediately realizes this isn't a pillow at all. The cloth covering feels warm, too warm. The contents shift slightly under your touch, and you hear a small grunt that definitely didn't come from stuffing or grain. That soft-looking mound is actually someone's torso, and they're not particularly pleased about being poked by a stranger looking for bedding. Medieval travelers got incredibly creative with pillows because standard options simply didn't exist in communal sleeping spaces. A rolled-up cloak served as the most common makeshift pillow, assuming you owned a cloak thick enough to provide cushioning. The fabric needed to be substantial enough to create some padding between your head and whatever hard surface lay underneath, but not so thick that rolling it up created an uncomfortable lump. Bags of grain made excellent pillows when you could find them. Merchants traveling with goods often used their merchandise as bedding. A sack of barley or wheat provided the perfect combination of softness and support. The grain shifted to conform to your head shape while maintaining enough firmness to keep your neck properly aligned. Plus, sleeping on your valuable cargo meant no one could steal it without waking you first. You spot what looks like a promising pillow candidate near your sleeping area. The shape suggests a bag filled with something soft, possibly grain or cloth. You reach for it cautiously, having learned that assumptions about bedding often prove wrong in medieval taverns. Your fingers touch the surface and discover it's definitely a bag, but when you try to position it under your head, the contents start moving in ways that grain definitely shouldn't. Something inside the bag shifts and makes a small squeaking sound. Then another squeak answers from a different part of the bag. People sometimes mistook bundles for pillows and were in for a rude surprise. What looked like soft bedding could turn out to be someone's carefully packed possessions that weren't meant to support anyone's head for 8 hours. The person next to you has solved the pillow problem by using their traveling companion as a headrest. Their companion doesn't seem to mind, probably because they're doing the same thing in reverse. This arrangement works well until one person needs to move during the night, which leaves the other person's head dropping suddenly onto whatever hard surface they were trying to avoid in the first place. Medieval people grew up sharing sleeping spaces with family members, so using other humans as furniture felt perfectly normal. Parents used children as armrests. Children used parents as pillows. Siblings arranged themselves like puzzle pieces to maximize warmth and comfort in beds that were often too small for everyone who needed to sleep in them. Adult travelers simply extended this childhood experience to include strangers. You learn to appreciate any soft surface, even when it occasionally moves or makes weird noises. That bag that seemed perfect for a pillow might contain someone's spare clothes, which would be ideal, but it might also contain their week-old bread, which would be less comfortable. The bundle of cloth near your feet could be bedding, or it could be someone's dirty laundry that they're planning to wash at the next town with a decent river. Medieval standards for cleanliness were very different from modern expectations. What smelled acceptable to people who bathed maybe once a month might seem overwhelming to someone used to daily showers. But when you're tired enough, your standards adjust quickly. A musty cloak starts feeling like luxury bedding when the alternative is sleeping with your head directly on straw-covered wooden planks. The real test becomes figuring out what's safe to lean against without causing problems for yourself or others. That comfortable-looking pile of soft goods might belong to someone who's very particular about their possessions. Medieval travelers protected their belongings fiercely because replacing stolen items was expensive and often impossible. Use someone's cloak as a pillow without permission, and you might wake up to a very angry conversation about property rights. You notice other travelers have created pillows from combinations of available materials. One person has folded their cloak around their boots to create a surprisingly comfortable-looking headrest. Another traveler has positioned their travel bag so it supports their head while keeping their valuables secure under their body weight. A merchant has arranged several small packages into a pillow formation that probably also serves as inventory protection. The woman near the wall has solved her pillow problem by negotiating with her neighbor. They've agreed to take turns using each other's shoulders as headrests, switching positions halfway through the night so neither person has to sleep uncomfortably for the entire evening. This kind of cooperative sleeping arrangement required trust and communication skills that medieval people developed out of necessity. Your pillow tonight might be a boot, a bag, or a guy named Reginald, but at least it's yours for the duration of your stay. Medieval comfort was entirely about lowering your expectations and raising your creativity. The goal wasn't achieving perfect comfort. The goal was finding ways to make uncomfortable situations bearable enough to get some rest before tomorrow's journey continued. But the real test isn't finding a pillow. It's surviving the permanent residence upstairs. You're settling into your claimed patch of straw, arranging your belongings and trying to find a comfortable position for what promises to be a long night. The human chaos around you starts making sense. People have their spots, their routines, their unspoken agreements about space and boundaries. You think you're getting the hang of medieval communal sleeping. Then you notice some residents who clearly didn't pay for their stay, but seem to have more rights than anyone else in the room. These aren't travelers passing through for one night. These aren't merchants or pilgrims or farmers heading to market. These are the permanent staff, and they've been living here longer than most of the humans have been alive. A large dog wanders over and decides your legs look like the perfect sleeping spot. This isn't a small lap dog that you can easily relocate. This is a substantial canine, probably weighing more than some of the human travelers, with fur that's seen better days and breath that suggests he's been sampling everything that falls on the tavern floor downstairs. He circles your legs twice, then settles down with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where he belongs. You try to shift your legs to a more comfortable position, but the dog gives you a look that clearly communicates his opinion about humans who don't understand proper sleeping arrangements. His eyes say he's been claiming this exact spot for years, and your legs are just temporary obstacles that happen to be in his usual resting place when he arrived for the night. This isn't someone's pet that followed them upstairs from the main tavern. This is the tavern dog, a permanent resident who's been claiming bed space since before you were born. Medieval taverns kept dogs for practical reasons. They likely helped clean up food scraps, warned about intruders, and provided services that no human employee could match. In return, they got free food, shelter, and sleeping privileges that apparently superseded paying customers. The dog has clearly mastered the art of tavern sleeping. He knows which spots stay warmest during cold nights and which areas get the most comfortable straw. He understands the traffic patterns of late arrivals and early departures. Most importantly, he's figured out which humans are pushovers who'll accommodate his sleeping preferences and which ones might kick him away from their space. Your legs are now pinned under 40 pounds of dog, who's settling in for the night with satisfied grunts and the kind of deep breathing that suggests he considers this matter completely resolved. Moving would require a negotiation process that might involve growling, and you're not sure you want to test the diplomacy skills of a dog who's clearly won these territorial disputes before. Then there's the chicken strutting around like she owns the place. Because honestly, she probably does. Medieval taverns were working farms as much as they were hospitality businesses. Chickens provided eggs, meat, and services that earned their keep. They ate insects, mice, and food scraps that would otherwise attract less desirable creatures. This particular hen has the confident stride of someone who's never questioned her right to be exactly where she wants to be. She walks between sleeping humans with the casual authority of a tavern owner inspecting her property. Her head bobs as she examines each sleeping area, apparently conducting a nightly survey of her domain. She pauses near your head, fixes you with one bright eye, then continues her patrol with the satisfied air of someone whose inspection found everything in acceptable order. The chicken's presence explains some of the sounds you heard earlier, but couldn't identify. That soft scratching wasn't mice in the walls. That was her feet moving through the straw as she searched for dropped food or interesting insects. Both animals have developed sophisticated understanding of human behavior in sleeping situations and territorial rights that go beyond simple residence time. The dog knows which humans are likely to share food and which ones keep their provisions carefully guarded. He's learned to recognize the sounds of different types of travelers unpacking their belongings. The chicken has her own intelligence network, knowing which sleeping spots accumulate the most dropped crumbs and which humans are messy eaters who leave trails of food in their personal areas. They understand the rhythms of tavern life better than most human employees. They know when the last customers usually head upstairs, when the kitchen staff finishes cleaning, and when the building settles into its quietest hours. They've developed relationships with regular travelers who appreciate their company and territorial disputes with humans who don't respect their established rights. The dog snores louder than the blacksmith's bellows, creating a rumbling bass note that carries across the entire room. His breathing has the deep, rattling quality of someone who's completely comfortable and sees no reason to moderate his volume for the sake of lighter sleepers. The chicken has opinions about everything, and she expresses them through a running commentary of soft clucks, chirps, and occasional louder announcements when something particularly interesting catches her attention. You're about to learn that humans are actually the guests here, and these animals are the permanent management team who've graciously agreed to share their space with paying customers. The territorial dog snores like a bard with lung issues, and the hen clearly thinks she paid for the bed and is generously allowing you to use the remaining space. You're not sleeping with animals in their space. You're the animal who's been permitted to sleep in theirs. But the larger residents aren't your only roommates for the night. Something small and determined starts exploring your ankles with tiny feet as you settle under the shared blanket. The wool fabric feels thick and surprisingly warm against your skin, and after all the chaos of finding space, this moment feels like victory. You're horizontal, covered, and ready for sleep. The blanket has weight to it, the kind of substantial covering that promises to keep cold night air away from your body. The warmth feels welcoming at first. Medieval taverns didn't have heating systems, so shared body heat under thick blankets was often the only way to stay comfortable during cold nights. The wool traps air and creates insulation that makes the difference between shivering until dawn and actually getting some rest. You pull the blanket up to your chin and feel your muscles start to relax for the first time since entering this crowded room. But then you realize this blanket has been home to many previous guests, and not all of them were human. The fabric carries the accumulated history of everyone who slept under it for weeks, maybe months. Medieval taverns didn't change bedding between guests. Washing large wool blankets required enormous amounts of water, soap, and drying time that tavern owners couldn't afford to spend on daily laundry. The same blankets served travelers night after night, season after season. The sensation feels like someone drawing lines on your skin with a feather, except feathers don't usually walk in organized patterns across your legs. The movement is deliberate and purposeful, suggesting intelligence behind the exploration. These aren't random touches. This is someone conducting a thorough investigation of the new arrival in their established territory. Medieval blankets were like apartment buildings for creatures you couldn't see but definitely felt. The thick wool fibers created perfect hiding places for small residents who appreciated the warmth, darkness, and steady supply of human skin cells that fell from sleeping bodies. These micro-apartments offered everything tiny creatures needed to thrive: protection from larger predators, consistent temperature, and regular meals delivered by unknowing human hosts. The fabric itself became an ecosystem. Dust, skin particles, food crumbs, and moisture from sleeping humans created an environment where various small creatures could establish permanent communities. The weave of medieval wool was loose enough to allow movement between fibers, but tight enough to provide security for residents who preferred not to be disturbed during their daily activities. You feel more movement near your shoulder blade. Then something tickles the back of your neck. The sensations suggest multiple residents rather than just one curious explorer. Each creature seems to follow its own agenda, but their timing feels coordinated, like they're working together to assess this new addition to their living space. They move with the confidence of tenants who know their rights and don't consider human comfort a priority in their decision-making. These weren't just any bugs. These were seasoned veterans with territorial rights dating back generations. Medieval tavern blankets hosted communities of insects that had been living in the same fabric for years. Generations of bugs had established family lines in the safety of wool fibers, creating dynasties that outlasted most human residents of the tavern itself. Some of them had been living in tavern bedding longer than the current owner had been alive. Medieval businesses often passed from generation to generation, but the microscopic tenants maintained residents through ownership changes, renovations, and even fires that might destroy the building but spare the bedding. These creatures represented the true continuity of tavern life, outlasting human staff, management changes, and even complete rebuilding of the establishments they called home. The movement patterns suggest sophisticated social organization. You'd feel little movements in one area, then responding movements from different parts of the blanket, as if messages were being passed through the community. The timing felt too coordinated to be random. These residents had developed communication systems and territorial agreements that governed their interactions with each other and with the temporary human visitors who occasionally disturbed their routines. Medieval people understood that sharing space with small creatures was simply part of life. Houses had mice, barns had rats, and bedding had whatever chose to live there. The goal wasn't eliminating these creatures entirely, which would have been impossible with medieval technology. The goal was coexisting peacefully and hoping the residents weren't carrying diseases that could transfer to human hosts. You start wondering if they were holding meetings about the new arrival. The patterns of movement feel too organized to be accidental. There's a pause in activity, then renewed exploration that seems more systematic than the initial investigation. Perhaps the community leadership needed time to discuss their response to your presence. Maybe they were voting on whether to accept you as a temporary neighbor or treat you as an unwelcome intruder who needed encouragement to find somewhere else to sleep. The blanket community had probably developed protocols for dealing with human visitors. Some humans moved frequently during sleep and created disturbances that affected the entire neighborhood. Others slept deeply and provided stable environments where small creatures could go about their business without interference. Still others might scratch or swat when they felt movement, creating dangerous conditions for residents who just wanted to coexist peacefully. The exploration continues with methodical thoroughness. Different areas of your body receive attention from what seem to be different individuals conducting their own investigations. Your arms, legs, back, and neck all get visited by small feet that suggest various sizes and types of residents. This wasn't one creature making rounds. This was a diverse community with different specializations and territories within the shared blanket space. Some of them have seniority and clearly act as if they own the place. The most active exploration comes from areas of the blanket that seem to have the most established communities. These sections feel different under your body, more compressed and shaped by long occupation. The residents here move with authority that suggests leadership roles in the blanket's social hierarchy. Welcome to medieval cohabitation, where the smallest residents often had the biggest attitudes and the longest tenure in accommodations they considered rightfully theirs. But as you're about to discover, the tiny creatures under your blanket aren't the only ones with strong opinions about how this night should go. The humans sharing your sleeping space turn out to be quite the cast of characters, each one bringing their own special brand of chaos to what you hoped would be a quiet night. You settle into your claimed patch of straw, thinking you can just close your eyes, ignore the people around you, and drift off peacefully. Maybe you'll get lucky and everyone will fall asleep quickly, leaving you in the kind of silence that makes rest actually possible. That optimistic thinking lasts about 15 minutes. Each person in this crowded room brings their own special talent for making sleep completely impossible. You're about to discover that medieval people developed some very interesting nighttime habits during their lifetimes of sharing sleeping spaces with family members, servants, and strangers. What felt normal to them feels like organized torture to anyone expecting modern hotel standards of peace and quiet. Meet Sir Elbow in your face, the gentleman sleeping directly to your left who moves like he's fighting invisible enemies in his dreams. His arms swing through the air with surprising force and accuracy, finding your ribs, shoulder, and occasionally your head with the precision of someone who's practiced this routine for years. He grunts and mutters while he battles whatever demons populate his sleeping mind, completely unaware that his dream combat affects everyone within arm's reach. Medieval people grew up sleeping in rooms packed with siblings, parents, grandparents, and anyone else the family needed to house. Personal space during sleep was a concept that simply didn't exist for most people. Children learned to sleep through elbows, kicks, and rolling bodies because complaining about nighttime disturbances wasn't an option when everyone shared the same bed or sleeping area. Adults carried these childhood experiences into tavern life, where communal sleeping felt perfectly normal. Sir Elbow's battle techniques suggest he's fighting multiple opponents simultaneously. His left arm sweeps across his chest to block an imaginary sword while his right elbow drives backward into your shoulder to counter an attack from behind. His legs kick occasionally, apparently fending off ground-level enemies who require different defensive strategies. The intensity of his movements suggests whatever he's fighting in his dreams considers this a life-or-death struggle. You try shifting away from his combat zone, but your movement brings you closer to Lady Talks in Her Sleep About Turnips, who provides a running commentary on root vegetables that continues throughout the night. Her voice carries clearly across the room as she discusses the relative merits of different turnip varieties, proper storage techniques for winter preservation, and detailed recipes that require ingredients most people couldn't afford. She's certainly passionate about turnips, even in her sleep. No, you must harvest them before the first hard frost, or the texture becomes woody and bitter, she explains to some invisible companion with the authority of someone who spent decades perfecting root vegetable cultivation. Her expertise appears comprehensive and deeply personal, covering everything from soil preparation to winter storage methods. Medieval people ate turnips regularly because they grew reliably in poor soil and stored well through harsh winters. Turnips provided essential nutrition when other vegetables weren't available, making them survival food for families who couldn't afford meat or more expensive produce. Lady Talks in Her Sleep apparently spent enough time thinking about turnips during her waking hours that her sleeping mind continued processing turnip-related information all night long. The merchant near your feet has perfected the art of snoring in 3 different keys, creating a musical performance that would be impressive if it weren't preventing everyone else from sleeping. His breathing produces distinct tonal variations that suggest different levels of sleep depth and airway obstruction. The bass notes rumble through his chest and vibrate through the floor. The middle tones whistle through his nose with rhythmic precision. The high notes squeaking from his throat provide counterpoint to the deeper sounds. Medieval merchants traveled constantly, sleeping in different locations every night during trading expeditions that could last for months. They learned to fall asleep quickly in any environment because hesitation meant staying awake in uncomfortable conditions until exhaustion forced unconsciousness. This merchant's snoring suggests someone who's mastered the art of deep sleep regardless of surroundings, though his mastery comes at the expense of everyone else's rest. His 3-key performance follows predictable patterns. The bass notes dominate when he's sleeping deeply on his back. Rolling onto his side shifts the melody toward middle tones, with occasional high-pitched accents. When he settles onto his stomach, the snoring becomes muffled, but increases in volume, creating sound effects that suggest someone trying to breathe through wet wool. Medieval people didn't have separate bedrooms growing up, so communal sleeping felt completely normal to them. Families with money might have 2 rooms in their houses. Families without money had 1 room where everyone slept together regardless of age, gender, or relationship. Privacy was a luxury that most people never experienced, making tavern sleeping arrangements feel familiar rather than strange. Children learned to sleep through conversations, arguments, snoring, and movement because complaining wasn't an option when space was limited and silence wasn't possible. Adults carried these childhood skills into their traveling years, developing the ability to fall asleep in crowded, noisy environments that would keep modern people awake for hours. What seems chaotic and uncomfortable to you felt like normal sleeping conditions to medieval travelers. But these sleeping skills came with side effects. People who learned to sleep through chaos often contributed to that chaos without realizing it. Sir Elbow's combat dreams, Lady Turnip's agricultural lectures, and the merchant's musical snoring represent sleep behaviors that developed in response to crowded living conditions, but made those conditions even more challenging for everyone else. Think of it as dinner theater, except it's bedtime theater, and nobody asked for tickets to this particular show. The performance runs all night long, features a rotating cast of characters, and includes audience participation whether you want to participate or not. You're starting to think the chaos might actually settle down as people fall deeper into sleep, but medieval nights had their own schedule for when the real conversations began. Just as your eyes close, someone decides this is the perfect time for deep thoughts about waterfowl, and his voice carries across the room like he's delivering a sermon to a congregation of sleepy travelers who never asked to join his midnight lecture series. The man 3 beds over clears his throat with the authority of someone who has important information to share and no intention of waiting until morning to share it. Medieval people didn't have the entertainment options that modern folks take for granted. Books were rare and precious, owned only by wealthy merchants or clergy members who could afford such luxuries. Most people couldn't read anyway, making books useless even if they could obtain them. Evening entertainment meant conversations, storytelling, and discussions about whatever topics people found interesting enough to keep talking about after long days of physical labor. Nighttime in crowded spaces became social time by necessity. This particular gentleman has clearly spent considerable time thinking about ducks, and he's ready to share every insight he's developed during his years of waterfowl observation. His voice projects across the room with the confidence of someone who knows he has a captive audience. Nobody can leave. Everyone has to listen whether they want to or not. He's found the perfect moment to deliver his thoughts on a subject that apparently fascinates him deeply. He starts with duck intelligence, explaining how these birds demonstrate problem-solving abilities that rival human reasoning in certain situations. His examples include specific incidents he's witnessed where ducks solved complex problems involving food acquisition, predator avoidance, and social hierarchy disputes. He describes duck behavior patterns with the detail of someone who's spent years watching them closely, noting seasonal changes in their decision-making processes and adaptation strategies. His voice rises with enthusiasm as he moves into duck social structures and their implications for human society. He draws parallels between duck community organization and human village governance, suggesting that people could learn valuable lessons from waterfowl leadership models. Duck mating rituals become examples of proper courtship behavior. Duck parenting techniques offer insights into child-rearing strategies that human families might adopt. The sermon continues with theological implications of duck existence. He proposes that God created ducks as examples for human beings, demonstrating proper behavior through their loyalty to mates, dedication to offspring, and seasonal migration patterns that show trust in divine providence. Duck swimming abilities represent faith in action. Their capacity to function on land, water, and in air makes them symbols of versatility that humans should emulate. Other people join in with their own theories about various farm animals and their deeper meanings, turning the sleeping area into a spontaneous symposium on livestock philosophy. The discussions become increasingly complex and passionate as more voices join the conversation. Medieval people had limited opportunities for intellectual discourse during their daily lives. Work consumed daylight hours. Evening tasks like cooking and mending took priority over philosophical conversations. Bedtime in crowded taverns provided rare chances for people to explore ideas and share thoughts with others who might have different perspectives and experiences. A merchant adds his theories about horse psychology and the moral lessons humans can learn from equine loyalty. His travels have given him exposure to horses from different regions, and he's developed detailed observations about how breeding and training affect animal personality. He connects horse behavior to human character development, suggesting that people who work closely with horses develop superior moral qualities through daily interaction with creatures who demonstrate honesty and reliability. Medieval bedtime conversations covered topics that modern people might discuss during dinner parties or book club meetings. These travelers had education through experience rather than formal schooling. Their insights came from daily observation of animals, weather patterns, crop cycles, and human behavior. Nighttime discussions let them share this practical wisdom and develop theories about life that went beyond simple survival strategies. The duck philosopher's voice maintains its authoritative tone as he addresses questions and challenges from other participants in this impromptu forum. His responses demonstrate deep knowledge of waterfowl behavior combined with creative thinking about broader life applications. He handles disagreements with the patience of someone who's confident in his expertise and willing to educate others who haven't spent as much time studying duck society. Medieval bedtime was also discussion time, where people processed the day's experiences and explored ideas that didn't fit into work hours. These conversations served social functions that modern people fulfill through television, internet forums, and social media. The topics might seem random, but they represented genuine intellectual curiosity from people who had limited access to formal education or written materials. When someone starts philosophizing about ducks loudly at midnight, you know you're experiencing authentic medieval hospitality, where privacy was impossible and silence was rare. The night's entertainment comes from whatever subjects capture people's imagination and their willingness to share detailed thoughts with everyone within hearing distance. Who needs counting sheep when you can debate the existential nature of actual livestock with people who have strong opinions and unlimited time to express them? You're getting used to the sounds and movements around you, thinking maybe you can tune out the philosophical discussions and finally drift off to sleep. Before the morning comes, your senses face one final test. Your nose discovers there's another layer to this medieval hospitality adventure that makes every other challenge seem minor by comparison. The shared sleeping space creates a unique sensory experience that modern hotels simply can't match. You're getting used to the sounds and movements around you. The rhythmic snoring has become background noise. Lady Turnip's agricultural lectures feel almost soothing compared to Sir Elbow's midnight battles. Even the chicken's occasional commentary seems normal now. Your body starts relaxing into the straw beneath you. The dog's weight on your legs provides unexpected comfort. The blanket residents have completed their initial exploration and settled into whatever nighttime activities occupy their attention when humans stop moving around so much. You think you're finally adjusting to all the chaos that comes with communal medieval sleeping arrangements. Then someone near the center of the room sighs deeply, probably shifting into a more comfortable sleeping position, and fills the shared airspace with the unmistakable scent of garlic. Not just a hint of garlic from dinner eaten hours ago. This is fresh, powerful garlic that suggests someone consumed impressive quantities of the stuff recently, and their digestive system is now sharing the results with everyone else in the room. Medieval people ate enormous amounts of garlic because it was cheap, flavorful, and supposedly kept away evil spirits that might cause sickness or bad luck. Garlic grew easily in most climates and stored well through winter months when fresh vegetables became scarce. Poor families relied on garlic to make bland foods more interesting and to add nutrition to meals that might otherwise consist entirely of bread and whatever grain they could afford. The medical wisdom of the time claimed garlic could prevent plague, cure digestive problems, and ward off supernatural threats that medieval people genuinely feared. Travelers carried garlic for protection during journeys through dangerous territories where bandits, wild animals, and malevolent spirits posed constant threats. Eating garlic wasn't just about flavor. It was considered essential health insurance for people who couldn't afford doctors or expensive medicines. In a closed room where windows rarely opened during cold nights, every meal became a shared experience hours after people finished eating. The stone and timber construction of medieval taverns created environments where air moved slowly if it moved at all. Whatever scents entered the room stayed there until morning when doors opened and allowed fresh air to replace the accumulated atmosphere of 30 people sleeping together. The garlic scent mingles with wet wool from damp clothing that never fully dried, creating the dominant aromatic signature of medieval communal sleeping. Medieval clothing was made primarily from wool because it provided warmth even when damp, but wool that got wet from rain, snow, or sweat developed a musty odor that intensified in warm enclosed spaces. Every person in the room wearing wool clothing added their contribution to the collective scent experience that defined medieval hospitality. The air becomes a mixture of garlic, wet wool, wood smoke from the fireplace downstairs that seeps through floorboards, and whatever the chickens had for dinner before settling in among the human sleepers. Medieval taverns burned wood constantly for heating and cooking, creating smoke that permeated every surface and became part of the permanent atmospheric character of these buildings. The chickens bring their own aromatic elements to the situation. Their feathers carried dust and whatever substances they encountered during their daily activities around the tavern property. Their droppings create additional scent notes that mix with human contributions to form the complete olfactory symphony of medieval hospitality. Farm animals living alongside humans meant animal scents became part of normal indoor air quality. You start to understand why medieval people had much stronger tolerances for interesting smells than modern folks who grew up with daily baths, deodorant, and ventilation systems that constantly refresh indoor air. Medieval people bathed infrequently because heating water required enormous amounts of fuel and labor. Personal hygiene focused on washing hands, faces, and occasionally feet rather than full-body cleaning that would remove all natural human scents. Their clothing absorbed smells from cooking fires, animal contact, and daily work activities that involved handling materials like leather, metal, and various organic substances that modern people encounter rarely if ever. Medieval noses adapted to scent levels that would overwhelm people accustomed to the sanitized environments of modern indoor spaces with filtered air and chemical cleaning products. The combination of human digestive contributions, unwashed bodies, damp clothing, wood smoke, and animal presence creates an atmospheric experience that explains why medieval people spent enormous amounts of time outdoors even during harsh weather. Indoor air quality was challenging enough during the day when doors opened frequently and people moved in and out regularly. Nighttime in sealed sleeping spaces concentrated all these scents into concentrated form that made outdoor air seem incredibly fresh by comparison. Medieval travelers learned to breathe through their mouths when necessary and to appreciate outdoor air with intensity that modern people rarely experience. Fresh air became a luxury rather than something taken for granted. Opening a door or window created genuine relief rather than minor temperature adjustment. The aromatic experience reaches full complexity when someone else contributes their own digestive commentary to the shared atmosphere, adding new scent layers that suggest they enjoyed different food choices during their evening meal. The room's atmosphere becomes a record of everyone's recent dining decisions and digestive processes, creating a communal sensory experience that makes privacy impossible even for bodily functions that modern people consider completely personal. Think of it as aromatherapy. If aromatherapy involved turnips, questionable hygiene choices, and the concentrated breathing of 30 people who considered bathing a seasonal activity rather than a daily routine. You're learning that surviving medieval hospitality means adjusting your expectations about every sense, not just comfort and privacy. But morning will bring its own surprises about what actually constitutes success in this strange world. Dawn breaks, and you get to evaluate how well you survived your first medieval sleepover experience. Gray light filters through the small windows, revealing the full scope of what you've endured during the night. Your eyes open slowly, adjusting to the morning light that shows the sleeping area in all its straw-covered glory. Bodies still sprawl across the floor in various positions that suggest the night involved more movement than actual rest. You start checking to see what made it through the night with you, beginning with a mental inventory of your possessions and body parts. This isn't paranoia. This is practical medieval survival assessment. Your hands move automatically to verify that everything you brought into this room is still where you left it. Medieval taverns operated on the principle that anything not physically attached to your body might disappear during the night. Your money pouch still rests securely under your body, your knife remains in its sheath, and your shoes are still on your feet. This triple victory represents major success since theft wasn't necessarily malicious but often born of desperate need. Someone without shoes might take yours if their need seemed greater. A person traveling without a knife might claim yours if they faced dangerous roads ahead. In medieval taverns, keeping your belongings was actually an achievement worth celebrating rather than something you took for granted. Medieval shoes cost more than most people earned in weeks of labor. Good leather boots could represent a family's entire savings for a season. Sleeping with shoes on wasn't just about theft prevention. It was about warmth, protection, and readiness to leave quickly if circumstances required sudden departure. Your feet feel cramped from spending the night in leather boots, but they're warm and dry. The straw provided enough insulation to prevent cold from seeping through the wooden floor. Your toes wiggle normally inside the leather, suggesting no serious circulation problems developed during the night. The boots show no signs of tampering, gnawing, or other damage that might have occurred if the tavern's animal residents decided to investigate your footwear. Your back hurts, but it's only mild pain instead of the complete agony you expected from sleeping on straw-covered wooden planks for an entire night. The straw actually provided more cushioning than you anticipated. Medieval people knew how to arrange straw for maximum comfort, creating layers that distributed body weight evenly and prevented pressure points that would make sleep impossible. The pain feels manageable, more like mild stiffness than sharp agony. Your spine aligned reasonably well during the night despite the uneven surface. The wall support helped maintain proper sleeping posture. Other people's bodies created additional cushioning and warmth that reduced the hardness of the floor beneath the straw layer. Medieval travelers developed techniques for sleeping comfortably on rough surfaces because inn beds were luxury accommodations that most people couldn't afford regularly. They learned to position their bodies to minimize pressure on joints and bones. They used clothing, bags, and other soft items to create padding in strategic locations. They understood how to share body heat while maintaining enough personal space to avoid constant disturbance from restless sleepers. The chicken is sitting on someone else's chest this morning, which means you've been spared that particular honor and responsibility. The hen perches proudly on a merchant near the door, apparently having chosen him as her morning roosting spot. He doesn't seem particularly pleased with this arrangement, but he's learned that arguing with territorial chickens rarely produces favorable outcomes for humans. Your chest feels unencumbered by poultry, allowing you to breathe freely and move without negotiating with a bird who considers herself part of the tavern's management team. The chicken's decision to relocate suggests you pass some kind of overnight evaluation process. Perhaps you moved too much during sleep to serve as suitable furniture. Maybe your breathing patterns didn't meet her standards for comfortable roosting. Medieval travelers measured successful nights by what they didn't lose, rather than how well they rested or how comfortable they felt upon waking. Sleep quality was secondary to survival of possessions, health, and dignity. A good night meant emerging with the same belongings you brought, no serious injuries from fellow sleepers, and no evidence of theft, assault, or disease transmission that might affect your ability to continue traveling. If we're being generous with our modern sense of humor, you could say medieval tavern stays operated on their own rating system. Keeping all possessions, avoiding serious injury, and waking up in roughly the same condition you achieved when lying down would earn top marks. Minor losses or discomfort that didn't threaten your continued journey meant decent results. Significant problems that would affect your travel plans but didn't constitute complete disaster suggested a rough night but survivable experience. Major losses or injuries that created serious problems for continued travel meant you'd had a truly bad time. Complete catastrophic failure where you lost important possessions, suffered significant harm, or contracted illness that would prevent normal activities for extended periods represented the worst possible outcomes. The ultimate failure meant you didn't wake up at all, which occasionally happened in medieval taverns where violence, disease, or accidents created permanent solutions to temporary accommodation problems. Your morning inventory reveals mostly positive results by medieval standards. Both shoes remain securely attached to your feet. Your money stays in your possession. Your knife hasn't disappeared. Your back pain feels manageable rather than debilitating. No mysterious injuries suggest midnight violence. The chicken chose someone else for morning interaction. Waking up with both shoes, only mild back pain, and no chicken on your chest qualifies as exceptional hospitality outcomes by the standards that mattered to travelers who had realistic expectations about communal sleeping arrangements. You've achieved the tavern trifecta of survival, comfort, and dignity that represented the best possible results for people who understood what medieval travel actually involved. Congratulations! You've passed the final test of tavern life and lived to complain about it, which puts you ahead of travelers who had worse luck with their fellow sleepers, more aggressive chickens, or less secure sleeping arrangements. You've survived an authentic medieval hospitality experience that reveals something important about human adaptability and the relative nature of comfort itself. These medieval sleeping arrangements show us something fascinating about human nature and our ability to adapt to circumstances that would horrify modern travelers. Medieval tavern sleeping reveals that humans have always found ways to make the best of cramped, chaotic situations with surprising humor and resilience. These travelers created community from chaos, turning shared misery into shared experience. They developed strategies for coexistence that modern people lost when privacy became possible. Next time you tuck in at a hotel, remember the solidarity of sufferers past, and that comfort is relative and privacy is a modern luxury that most humans throughout history never experienced. Your ancestors survived centuries without private bedrooms, individual bathrooms, or guaranteed personal space. Sweet dreams, and may your bed always be chicken-free and your shoes stay exactly where you left them. Drop a comment and tell us about your weirdest sleepover story. We'd love to hear how your experiences compare to medieval tavern chaos.